Doing very well. Excited to be here. Glad we have a strong connection. I've hidden away on a mountain for a few weeks, so I wasn't sure how reliably we'd be able to get through, but you sound good. Where are you at, Seamus?
Currently live in Illinois.
Okay, okay. Yeah, when you said we are 2 hour difference, I was like, oh, that's back in my neck of the woods as I am from Indiana originally.
Nice.
There's some of the ugliest and some of the prettiest parts of Indiana up in Northwest Indiana.
Yeah, because whenever I go to Indiana, we mainly just cut over the north part of Indiana, so we just go around Lake Michigan.
Well, if you're ever in Peru, Indiana, that's going to be a couple hours out of your way, but that's my hometown. It's also the hometown of the incredible songwriter Cole Porter, and it's also the home of the world's greatest amateur circus. So I don't know if they can do it this year. Hopefully, they can pull it off. But in the third week of July, you can go into Peru. The biggest building in Peru is a permanent three-ring circus in the middle of downtown, and like 300 kids from the county put on an incredible circus show every year. Some of them go on to be professional stunt people, perform in professional circuses. I was terrible at the circus. That's why I ended up getting into acting, but I certainly got part of my love for performance from growing up in that town.
All right, nice. Yeah, because I was actually about to ask what got you into acting in the first place.
Yeah, I'd say it was really, I mean, yeah, growing up every summer, going to the circus, seeing all the bigger kids doing that. There was a good local civic theater group there that my parents were involved with, so I got involved. But I think even more than either of those, it goes back to like falling in love with A New Hope or Raiders of the Lost Ark and just being so swept away by these movies that I wanted to be a part of those movies. I wanted to be in their world, in their universe. And somewhere, along the way, as I got involved with the Civic Theater when I was around 8, 9 years old, start kind of making home movies and just kind of realize like, oh, I love doing this. And rather than, go work in an office or, actually be a police officer or be a soldier in war, I could just pretend to do all of those things, not really put myself in any real danger, just do all the fun parts and yeah, and never looked back.
Well, that's nice to hear. Personally, I'm a guy who's always wanted to be an actor too. Uh, and when it comes to some other things, mainly I've always wanted to act in, say, films, like, say, biopics, to portray the real life stories of real people as realistically as I possibly can.
Cool, very cool. Who, if you could play one person, who would it be?
Oh, geez, that would be a long list of people. However, if I had to say off the top of my head, maybe a new biopic about Andy Kaufman.
Great, great,
Yeah,
great choice.
especially since I'm such a huge fan of Man on the Moon. I feel like there were a couple missed opportunities. So if I ever had the chance, I would love to try a new step at that.
Well, and I am a Jim Carrey fanatic. I thought he did a wonderful job, but I think by the time you get that put together, the world will be ready for another one. It's shocking how long it's already been since that movie came out, but with
Yeah,
somebody that
1999.
fascinating, yeah, that's crazy. There's always new stories to tell with somebody like that.
Yeah, I actually have Jim Carrey's autograph. Actually,
Nice.
yeah, I got it from my dad for Christmas.
Oh, that is a good dad and a great Christmas present.
Yeah, it was. I was kind of shocked by it because kind of funny thing actually. I remember I asked him if we could get a autograph poster of Man on the Moon, which apparently he didn't see my message about that. However,
Hmm.
coincidentally, he still got a signed Jim Carrey photo.
What was it, like a headshot or is it from one of his movies?
It was basically like a headshot, sort of. Like it was. I guess they were doing like say stock photos with him, and this was one of them where he's holding up a piece of paper.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, he's a hero. Going back to that, like in middle school, when In Living Color first came on and really introduced him to the public, I did his character, Fire Marshal Bill, in a couple school talent competitions. And then, I was right in the sweet spot of middle school, high school, for Ace Ventura and the Cable Guy, and he was definitely my idol at that time and the guy I was working to be. Funny story: I started dating my wife in college, and we'd probably been dating 5 6 years. Around the time we were getting engaged, we'd moved to LA, and I didn't know she had never seen Ace Ventura. So we watch it together. And afterwards, she's like, I just can't believe it. I I thought all along, like, these qualities, these lines, this sort of mannerisms I had were just uniquely mine. That was just the Ward that she knew and fell in love with, and she was completely flabbergasted what chunk of my personality derived directly from the Ace Ventura movies.
Travel back in time to save an ancient species from total annihilation. So far, no signs of aquatic life, but I'm going to find it. If I have to tear this universe another black hole, I'm going to find it. I've got to, mister!
Yeah, because when it comes to people like Jim Carrey, he's a great comedic actor. Films like, say, Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, and Ace Ventura. And it's very clear some people don't take him as seriously as he possibly can. Such as, say, when it came to The Man on the Moon, people were kind of surprised exactly how great of a dramatic performance he gave. I think he actually won a Grammy for that. Not Grammy, Emmy, I think.
Well, and it was, when he was making that transition, he did The Truman Show, he did Man on the Moon, Eternal Sunshine. Those were all like really excellent, serious films that he got to do some comedy, sure, but really showed his dramatic chops. But I feel like maybe The Majestic was such a bomb, and it didn't really allow him to do any like slip some of that great comedy in, and it just seemed to really poison the well for his dramatic career. And I think it's a damn shame for him and for all of us. He didn't get to keep making like those great Academy Award caliber films because clearly he started off great making that transition, and I can't really figure out why it didn't stick.
Yeah, especially because there are also a decent amount of other actors who tried doing that transition, but either they passed away before it could really go anywhere or just never went anywhere in the first place. Chris Farley apparently was supposed to do a lot more serious work, such as say a biopic about Fatty Arbuckle. However, it was supposed to happen right after the time when he passed away.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, Elvis, who I absolutely is my all-time favorite on the music side of things, he was starting to trend that way early. He did great work in King Creole, and Flaming Star was this really great movie he did, directed by Don Siegel. And he really, in fact, the songwriter Mike Stoller and his late partner Jerry Lieber, they had approached Elvis around the time that they did King Creole and said, "Hey, we have Bud Schulberg, who wrote On the Waterfront, and Elia Kazan, of course, who directed it, and they want to do a project with you and with us, and we'll do the music. They'll write and direct it, and you're the star." And Kazan, he was doing it with Brando and James Dean then, and those were Elvis's acting heroes. But the Colonel freaked out, told Mike Stoller and Jerry Lieber they'll never get to talk to Elvis. They'll never get to work with Elvis again, and basically shut them out, shut that whole possibility down, and locked Elvis into that ridiculous deal with Paramount to make all those beach movies essentially. And Elvis always regretted that he didn't get to go and really find out how good of a dramatic actor he could be. So look, I don't feel too bad for him. He had a really great career in a lot of other ways. But it just goes to show, even when you're Elvis or Jim Carrey or Chris Farley, how hard it is to get the world of entertainment to do for you what you want them to do. Elvis, it was more on his manager, it was more on the Colonel. Elvis could have figured that out if he just wasn't so dependent on the Colonel. But yeah, it's crazy. It's tough to have it all. It's tough to do everything.
Yeah, because when it came to Elvis, he could do pretty much anything he wanted to as long as there's not really anything stopping him. Like, there was these really famous stories where if he would talk to some of his friends, he would always give them gifts, and those gifts were usually either a car or a gun. to the point where when he went to go meet President Nixon, he just gave him a gun. He gave him a gun in a glass case and he was like, "Here's your present."
Now give me a badge. Now make me a narc.
That's pretty much exactly what happened. Actually, he asked him if he could have a badge for a branch of the government that didn't even exist. So I think it was specifically for like um for drugs inspection.
Yeah, it was Nixon had just declared the war on drugs a thing, and Elvis, I love him to death, but the hypocrisy that he was concerned about weed while he was hopped up on uppers, downers, and everything else you could possibly think of from the pharmacy. There's a great irony there that he was there to help Nixon enforce the draconian drug laws of the new wave. You know, um, I think it's one of those moments in time. I did read a pretty good article of like he basically just showed up at the White House and everybody was like, "What? Elvis is here?" And the whole White House had to go into this scramble and be like, "Well, President Nixon's got a full day. Does he want to take the time to actually like meet Elvis?" But Nixon and his team saw it as a good PR stunt because they knew the youth of the country generally distrusted and disliked Nixon, and they're like, "Well, maybe we get a photo op with Elvis, and it'll help him with that demographic."
Yeah, because around that time, that's when Nixon started going down in popularity. This was before Watergate, so he wasn't really hated. However, he was kind of disliked, and
It was
so
the
he didn't
it
even
was
know
the
Elvis.
whole
So
Yeah, it
he
was the
wanted,
whole the Vietnam thing is why the kids, especially the counterculture movement was so vocal against him. But what he didn't understand was like Elvis really wasn't a part of that. Elvis was a generation before.
yeah, and like actually, when it came to that photo of him and Elvis, that photo has like the greatest name ever. It's called the time the king met the president.
Yeah. And they did make a movie, didn't they? I didn't see it, but I think they made a movie about
Yeah, it
that.
was called Nixon and Elvis.
Did you see it? Was it any good?
I have not seen it, but I've been planning on seeing it. All
Yeah,
right, so
well, there
yeah,
you
so
go.
let's go back to like the main questions. What
Sure,
was your
sure.
very first film
That I acted in or I made?
that let's go with acted in first, and then let's do made.
So the first real, like, let's say the first feature I did was my best buddy and longtime collaborator, Travis Betts. We met in college. We were in an improv troupe together, and we moved out to LA at the same time. We were roommates, and he wrote this incredible, dark, twisted horror script called Joshua. I read it. He wanted me to be the lead. I felt sort of nauseous after reading it. I'm like, great, let's go. So then we raised some money and we went back to his hometown in Indiana, South Bend, and we filmed it all in and around South Bend. I guess I would have been probably maybe 24 or 25 when we shot that, and it was cool. Fangoria actually distributed it and gave us a nice spread. And I was shooting
Nice.
out in Hawaii when it came out, and I went to Borders Books, which was still a thing then, and there was the DVD right on the shelf. I was like, "Holy shit, we made it!"
Yeah, because I was checking out your IMDb a while ago, just in preparation of this, so I could see a lot of the other things you did. I saw you did a lot of shorts.
For sure, for sure, especially in the early days.
Yeah, because one thing I noticed, I think you did like about two or three of them in 2004, and like another one in 2006.
Yeah, and it's one of those. I mean, when I first got to LA and just sort of trying to get a sense of direction, foundation, and I joined this theater conservatory school, Playhouse West, Meisner's Technique, and I met a group of actors in there who wanted to form like a production company. So we ended up making this short called The Boy Scout, which was awesome because putting all our resources together, we shot on 35 millimeter because digital was just starting to happen. We got this amazing stunt crew who one of the guys went to the stunt guy coordinator's wife's college. They went together. So it was all these kind of things where everybody pulls in favors.
Come quickly, Cubby. The eagle has fallen into the hands of the evil Yakono.
What's that? What are you gonna do with that?
I'm gonna get exactly what I came for.
And Shane Black, most recently, writer director of The Nice Guys, directed Iron Man 3, wrote Lethal Weapon. He came in and was just like one of the goons for us on one of the days. So it was sort of like everybody who'd been in town a couple of years pushing all their chips in. And it was an amazing experience, and we played a bunch of festivals with that, and I played the lead as well. So up until this movie I've got in post production now, that was really the last movie I wrote, directed, and put myself in as a leading role. And it was a lot. So, kind of moving forward after that, I was always like, I'm going to write and direct over here, I'm going to act over there. I don't want to spread myself too thin doing these things.
All right, yeah, because when we started off this, you said that there was a difference between acted in and made. What was the very first film that you made?
Well, the home movies going all the way up till, I'd say we're all just sort of experiments. And then my senior year in high school, I made a parody film. I went to a drive in and saw Rumble in the Bronx, which was my first experience of Jackie Chan. And so we basically did a 20-minute parody of that called Rumble in the School. And then got to college, ended up doing a few short films in college. And then basically after I made the Boy Scout, then we came back to Indiana and shot Travis's movie Joshua, and I was like, okay, now I got to make a feature. So I'd met Sid Haig, the late great Sid Haig, at a horror convention, and I had written another script for him. I wanted him to star in. I couldn't get the financing for that, but while I was back home trying to raise money for that, I got some. And then I was like, well, part of the resistance I'm having in my conservative, small Indiana hometown to this zombie movie about stoner zombies, nobody would feel that way if I made a movie about the circus. So I kind of on the fly wrote this script called Little Big Top, which would still star Sid Haig, but instead of he had just been coming off the House of a Thousand Corpses explosion, and so I'm like, this is going to be a clown role too, Sid, but you're going to be an aging, drunk, broke clown who comes back to his hometown basically to drink himself to death, kind of leaving Las Vegas and Peru, Indiana. But in order to feed his alcohol habit, he got roped into taking a job training the clowns down at the local circus. So it ends up being very much this heartwarming comedy, somewhat dark comedy, but comedy about, him finding a new reason to live back in his hometown with all these amateur clowns who are just doing it for fun. So we got to shoot a bunch of it in the actual circus building, and some other the locations around town, and it was a wonderful experience. We shot it on Super 16. We had like 18 or 20 production days. We had a full professional crew. I was like 25, 26, and really didn't realize how great we had it. And it turned out well. It played some festivals, it got distribution, but it also was coming out right as the economy imploded in 2008. And
Ah,
the company we sold it to ended up going under, and they sold it to somebody else who sold it to somebody else. And now you can still stream it. It's like on some like streamer like Fawcett, like Fossum TV, Awesome TV. But there was a lot of lessons learned both creatively and financially on what it takes to have it be so successful that you get your next one paid for. It certainly didn't do that because of how things worked out on the business end, but and you learn so much making your first feature, just about, oh, maybe I do need more coverage than I thought because the pacing in the editing room didn't quite work the way I thought it would on page and on set. And if I'd gotten myself two close ups instead of just shooting it in a two, I could have sped that scene up and the comedy would have worked better and the pacing for the film would have worked better. So I think most filmmakers, their first film is like hard to watch, but I know a lot of people out there do love it. I think particularly like European people seem to love it. They're more okay with the slow pacing, but yeah, I have fond affection for it in my heart. It's just still I haven't watched it in at least 15 years.
All right, all right. So when it comes to your different types of work, what would you say is the work that you are most proud of?
It is the features that I have made with my friends. It started with Joshua, and then several of those folks got to work on Little Big Top. And then we made another movie of Travis's back in LA called Low, LO. It's about the demon Low. And I was the lead human, if you will. And that came out right when Netflix streaming was taking off. And it had incredible artwork. And even though we made it for like 20 grand in like 6 days was our principal shoot, it really blew up. And I still to this day occasionally will get somebody contacting me or even like seeing me out and about. Not really in the last year, of course, where they that movie just like changed their lives. And so Low was the movie of if we've collectively made about 9 features together, Travis is writer director or myself as writer director, and our production company is called Drexelbox. I think it's either drexelbox.com or drexelboxfilms.com. You can see a lot of different content there. But those features we made together with a lot of the same actors, a lot of the same crew, um, that those are the ones that carry the most pride because they were our babies. And they all were completely, with each successive film and as digital came in, we actually got less resources and we had to do more with less in a lot of ways. And just I know those are the ones I'll take to my grave being like, I believed in the story we were telling, and we all believed in the people we were telling the story with. And it's hard to top that, rather than just being a gun for hire on something. And I'm really proud of a lot of the acting work I've gotten for sure, but it's just different when you're showing up for a few days on somebody else's thing and you're really only responsible for saying your lines and doing your part, and then thank you. You can watch it on TV or in the theater when everybody else does. It's just impossible for that to be as personal or as meaningful.
All right, all right. Yeah, like when it comes to those films, I'll see if maybe I can find them streaming anywhere. I'll see if I can give them a watch.
The
So when it comes
easiest
to
one to watch, it's very disturbing, but it was my second feature as writer director, but it's on Amazon Prime. It's called Dust Up, and it's like a
okay,
grindhouse neo western. And I have a brief cameo in that, which is hopefully hilarious. But it's a very disturbing dark comedy set out in Joshua Tree with meth heads, drug lords, a one-eyed modern day cowboy type of thing. So that one's readily available. I know that,
well, thankfully I have Amazon Prime, so I'll check it out.
free of charge.
Yeah. All right. So when it comes to some of your other works, what one do you think had the biggest effect on your career?
Well, none, because I don't, to be totally honest, I don't have a career. Like, nothing I've ever done has really started to open doors. It feels like everything I've done sort of came and went, and then months or longer goes by, and then, oh, I've got a different agent or a new manager, or my friend's over here casting this, or my buddy's directing that, and that there's never been a job or a role I've had that suddenly brought me more opportunities. Now, I think you put all of those together and it's like, oh, okay. X number of people in Los Angeles know Ward is a capable actor. But I've never been in a TV show or in a movie where somebody called me later and said, "Hey, I saw you in this, and I want you to be in my thing." So I wish, that idea of a break of something that got the ball rolling for me. It hasn't happened yet. I'm still hoping it might, but especially with the kind of year we just had, where I had basically zero opportunities, you do start to wonder, like, am I ever going to act again? I just don't know.
Well, I feel like that opportunity might come pretty soon because when it comes to games like, say, Mafia Definitive Edition, you've very clearly gotten a larger fan base because of games like Definitive Edition. So a while ago, you
Right?
mentioned before that when you got the character of Ralphie, you said you started looking more into the stuttering foundations.
Yes. Well, and what was I think a big lesson for me in getting this job, and I hadn't, if I'd known how great it was going to be, I probably would have fucked up the audition. I'm sorry if I used the F bomb.
Don't worry, don't
If
worry, it's
there's
all fine.
Okay, if there's children listening, but was I'd never auditioned for a video game before. I had a big audition for an HBO show like due the night before, so I barely got to work on like I didn't think about it too much. I was driving out to the audition. My dad was in town. I picked him up and I just basically listened to a YouTube video on how to do a good Chicago dialect while I was waiting for my dad to come down from his hotel room. Then I had him run lines with me on the way out to the audition. And I was like, I just want like my character, my voice to be consistent. And it basically was the same voice, the same character that showed up in the video game, except that and so I think one, it was like, oh, I really went for it in on that edition. I really went for a full blown character. I wasn't just trying to make it real naturalistic to my own voice and my own personality. I totally went for it. I think because I think about it and let more nuanced or subtle or blah blah blah. I was like, no, just go for it. And so then once I got the role, well, I was like, okay, well, I want to really dial this in. They got us a great dialect coach to help us really nail the Chicago gangster dialect. And then, yeah, just a lot of YouTube videos on stuttering to try to not only replicate what an authentic stutter sounds like, feels like, but, where is it coming from? And just to have more of an empathy for the people who have dealt with stuttering for their whole lives. It's like a lifelong thing. um, and in doing that, it is heartbreaking to watch a lot of these people and their struggle with stuttering, public speaking, whatever it is. There's a great strength there, which is also inspiring, but it's still heartbreaking to see anybody have to deal with that every time they try to speak. So I think that naturally sort of awoke something in me that I needed to tap into, that struggle, that difficulty, yet that strength and that resolve to keep going. So that's sort of really adding a depth to your character beyond the words on the page, or just trying to mimic something. It's like to feel that, to understand that, and then when you have these great actors coming to the sound stage and either picking on you or being nice to you in the scenes, not in real life, um, you just kind of understand. You're like, oh, these kids, of course they were bullied in middle school because of their difficulties with speech. And then when you do have somebody reach out a hand of friendship, and to be kind and patient with you, you just have a much better understanding of what that experience must be like in real life.
See, you're still limping. Guess we got two cripples working here.
We ain't nothing alike. You got that, Ralph?
Sure, Polly. Yeah.
Tommy. Tommy Angelo.
good to meet you.
Yeah, because of stuttering, I used to have a horrendous stutter. I've gotten a lot better with it since I've been a lot more relaxed recently. So thankfully, it doesn't affect me as badly as it does before. Because I used to sound like Ralphie.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that at all.
Yeah, cause like, and when it comes to your performance in comparison to the original Mafia game from 2002, you got it down perfectly. The voice sounds the exact same. You did a fantastic job with that.
Visit. How you all doing, Paulie?
Hey, Ralphie.
See you're still limping, so we got two cripples working here.
That's right, but I ain't a fool. Ralph, this is Tom. If you bring him a stolen car, Tommy, I'll make it your own, and no one will know the difference.
And your performance of Ralphie did feel very authentic. And when you were mentioning a while ago that you were like looking into say all these different stuttering foundations, I can tell your performance was incredibly authentic, especially for say how badly some people can stutter. And especially for people like me who have had horrible stuttering problems in the past, I can tell when it sounds genuine.
Well, it's a relief to hear because even now when I listen back to it, I second guess myself if I if I could have gone further and I could have done it better. But when the reception, especially from the Mafia fans out there, was so warm, I was like, okay, well, and that's really the audience here. That's who we're trying to please, and especially when there's a precedent. And I had heard how affectionate the fan base was towards the original Ralphie. Now, I finally, after the game, our version came out, I think maybe here on Discord or on Reddit, I saw a clip of the original Ralphie for the first time. And I was like, oh, yeah, damn. Yeah, that's pretty close. So it's a complete coincidence. And maybe that's maybe my take, which just sort of naturally the way it came out of me was so close to what that gentleman did. I mean, I don't know if they were looking for a repeat performance, but clearly the game makers were good with what happened the first time. If they cast me to do something similar the second time.
Okay, yeah, that's nice. Yeah, it's like one other thing I did hear from some of the other actors, like say Jeremy, Don, and Andrew. They said before that when they originally auditioned for the game, they had no idea it was going to be a game. They were told it was just going to be a movie. That's what they were originally told when they were auditioning. Were you told up front it was going to be a game, or were you told up front it was going to be something else?
Yeah, I knew it was a video game, and my audition was much later, I believe, because I think they had all been shooting for several months, and they'd gone over to Europe already by the time I showed up in January or February to do my stuff up on the soundstage. So by the time I auditioned, I knew it was a video game, but I didn't know what. They called it Scotch. So I had no idea what the actual game was until I was at the airport and ran into those guys, and we were catching like a bus shuttle over to our rental cars up in Oakland. And Jeremy was like, "Yeah, you know what this is?" I was like, "I have no idea." And so he was like, "Yeah, it's the reboot of the Mafia franchise." I was like, "Oh." So yeah, and I don't know when they ended up learning it in the process, but it was all full of like non-disclosures, and I was not supposed to say anything about that publicly until the run up to the game's release. But I should, and then I started to appreciate the history and the devotion of the series because I hadn't had a video game console since a Sega Genesis in high school, so I was very much out of the gaming world. Was aware of the franchise, but only after I started film work on it that I was like, oh, let me get on the internet and find out what this is really all about.
All right, yeah, because when it comes to the Mafia franchise, that is a series that's very near and dear to me. And seeing you guys do such a great job with it, that really warmed my heart. Just seeing how great you guys did. Because especially when it comes to the original game, I've done a whole thing talking about this, but the original game is is not very well made, and the remake really goes to show to see the potential the original one really did have, and I'm really glad it finally got the potential it really deserved. And when it came to, and I actually remember before the game came out, we were doing the interviews with you. You did mention that you guys were under a ton of NDAs at the time. Is there anything else that we are allowed to hear now that we weren't allowed to hear before?
I don't think so. I think it's all out there now. I can't think of any particularly good juicy nuggets we were holding on to besides just the fact that hey, it's Mafia, all three of them, and particularly I think going back to the original where it was such a pioneering game, but the technology was so archaic that while there are plenty of things that get remade that shouldn't be because it was perfect the first time and there's nothing you can really do to improve upon it this time, you're just trying to make more money. No, I think this was those who originally made the game and those around them saying, look, it's been what, 15 plus years since you did that, and the technology is so far beyond what you ever could have imagined then. Let's finally fully realize this game. And but I think there, because so many of the original game makers were involved, and there was just so much devotion to doing it the right way. And you could tell, every person on set, everybody I interacted with through the whole process was so clearly trying to make the best game possible. It wasn't like, hey, let's churn this out and make a bunch more money because people will buy it anyway because they're fans and that's just what they do. No, there was no higher priority than making the people who got the franchise to be successful in the first place, brought them something worthy of more of their hard-earned dollars that would make them happy. They just wanted the people who created this game wanted to make you happy above all else.
Yeah, that's very apparent too, because when it came to the original game, the remake has so much improvement on what the original game had, especially since like the game originally had very little character development. However, the remake advanced so much in that, making it so much better. And and yeah, the original game is incredibly old now. It released in 2002. The remake was actually meant to release on the 18-year anniversary until it got pushed back about a month later.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy to me that they were even thinking so far ahead. Back in, if it came out in 2002, I'm sure they started working on it in the late 90s.
Yeah,
That's
1998 is the official start year.
just groundbreaking stuff, and to stick with it over a couple of decades to come back around and give it this treatment, I'm sure was very gratifying to see that whole journey, and everything from the first to the second to the third, but then to be able to come back and say, great, now we're going to do all three next level. That's obviously, it takes thousands of people and many millions of dollars to get that done, but they did it, and it's really fun to know it's out there in the world, and just to see. I do, Reddit is sort of my main social media go to, and to become a join some of the subreddits devoted to Mafia, and just to see the joy and the sort of specificity that the fans get into with various aspects of the new games compared to the old games, and again, I'm sure it's helped that the reception has been so warm. If they'd really messed it up, if we'd done a bad job and everybody was getting their torches and pitchforks out, I'm sure that would have felt very different. But as it's just been a really pleasant, rewarding experience to know, all this hard work and dedication is being appreciated, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, because yeah, when it comes to Mafia franchise and the fan base, like the one thing that people were so worried about Mafia Definitive Edition was the fact that they released Mafia 2 Definitive Edition. It wasn't a full remake; it was just a remaster. However, there were so many issues with it. People were worried that they were going to mess up Definitive Edition. When it came out, people were incredibly surprised, and some people were happy, some people were angry because people don't really like change that much. And the Mafia fan base, while it is incredibly loving, it is also full of some of the most ravenous people you will ever meet devoted to a certain franchise. They are like football teams when it comes to this. Yeah,
Well,
because
and is it
especially
something where you know, because I figure, well, if you love these original or earlier versions, those aren't ever touched. It's not like George Lucas going back in and putting Jabba into New Hope, where I'm like, no, I just want the original version. So it's like, oh, if you don't enjoy the new stuff, it doesn't mess with the old stuff.
yeah, that's one of the things that a lot of people try pointing out that yeah, you have the new thing, however, you still have the old thing. It's not going to be affected still. You still have the original. There's not really much reason to get so upset with the new one when you can always go back to the old one. Because when it does come to Mafia, like thankfully I've mainly only seen the fans be so aggressive. However, there are a couple of times where some people who worked on them have become aggressive.
The history and the drama and the people originally involved who weren't with this one, I was definitely oblivious to that. And even, you know, like anywhere on any subreddit or Discord, you're gonna see some trolls and some people pointing out things they don't like. But I just sort of refuse to acknowledge those, and I keep scrolling to find happy people and happy comments.
I can understand that. Like it's very hard to see negative things on something that you've worked so hard to perfect.
Yeah, it's, and you know, and to a certain degree, you can't take the effusive praise too much more seriously than the people being negative. But when I think about it, it's like, well, and this is even more on point with the projects I've made myself and or with my friends, real passion projects, to know that it's not for everybody. And some people just aren't going to get it. They aren't going to like it. And you know that when you're writing the thing and making the thing, but it's still difficult when you see people like, no, this is dumb. They didn't have any money. This is like amateur hour. But then the other people on the other side who totally get like the camp you were going for, or whatever it is on a given project, or they look past the budget and they look at the originality or the talent, and they're not, you know, they're not worried that it wasn't made by a major movie studio. But it's, so you kind of find that balance of like, yes, look, this person responded to it, this meant something to them, this entertained them, and that's why we did it for those folks, not for the people who it didn't bring joy into their life. And so I think it's you don't want to get too high or too low with the feedback coming from the outside. You've got to be doing it for you and the people you're doing it with, that joy of the craft and the creation. And of course, if nobody ever sees it or nobody ever likes what you did, it's terribly disappointing. But you kind of have to just say, look, this is us. We love doing this. We love telling the story, being these characters, whatever aspect your part is in a given project. And then you just kind of let the chips fall where they may as far as how the audience responds to it.
All right, yeah, because mainly what I've seen is that the fans of the original game, of course, been pretty ravenous with it. However, fans of the more recent ones or ones that are newcomers have usually been very open to this one. And that's a very positive thing to see. I love seeing that. And when it does come to the production of the game, I remember you mentioned that the first thing that you were told when you came in with the mocap suit was stop by Target, go get some winter clothes because apparently how cold it was there.
I just told that story today. I'm up here on this mountain with about an hour south of San Francisco, and I brought those clothes with me, long underwear essentially. And this was a buddy of mine who just moved up here with a little daughter, and it was me and my son, and we were out in the woods not more than 4 hours ago, and I told him that exact story. I was like, the sound stage was so cold, I had to have this long underwear I bought from Target, and I am wearing those pants right now as we're talking.
Yeah, yeah, because I actually remember Jeremy and Andrew once sent me this image where it was just them huddled around a heater, where it was them, Don, and Glenn just huddled around a heater, just trying to warm up.
That was it. When you were not out on the stage acting, you were over in your chair in front of a space heater.
Because I actually remember, like the one that Andrew sent was this one where everyone was all smiling, but then the one that Jeremy sent me, they all looked like they just wanted to die. Like Andrew was just frowning, like just like looking really upset. Like Jeremy was just not at all paying attention. Just Don had the most blank expression on his face, and Glenn was just looking down at the heater intently.
Yeah, yeah, it was real because it was when I was there, it was like January, February in the 40s, freezing rain, and that just imagine it like a big steel, really like a hangar for an airplane. It was so big with no insulation whatsoever. And it was, it doesn't need to be like a sound stage in LA or for an actual movie that has all that insulation for sound. So it was just bare bones. They didn't have to worry about sound. They just had to keep the rain out. And I don't, and a space like that is absolutely impossible to keep heated at large. So it's like, yep, all right, go thaw out your fingers in between takes.
So where was this place done? Was this like California or like in another place or something like that?
San Rafael, which is they would fly us into Oakland, and then you kind of go over the north side of the bay of San Francisco, and then it was actually to San Quentin. It was just a few miles from San Quentin prison is where our hotel was, and then you just drive about 10 minutes. And it's right before you get to wine country like Marin County and Sonoma and that stuff. It's just, I'm sure there's plenty of people who live there and commute into San Francisco over the Golden Gate Bridge. I'd say if you're on the Golden Gate Bridge, you're about a 20-minute drive north on the 101 to get where you were going.
All right. All right, yeah, yeah. Because when it comes to California, like I know it's very famous for having like droughts and stuff like that, but yeah, like I can assume that probably around the winter time, it's gonna be like one of the worst things just to get in a tight skin, tight suit where you can really wear anything else because you have to have like those metal beads in front of the camera. And I actually remember Don described it as a scuba suit with a camera 8 inches from your face.
Yeah, and ping pong balls attached all over your body.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, because when it comes like, do you ever plan to act for like like, do you have any other plans to work on another game?
No, I loved the Mafia experience so much. But again, this came out in a pandemic. So, sort of anybody's watching this and being like, hey, we're about to go into production on our video game. Maybe we could use this guy. That just hasn't been happening. Hopefully, those productions will start to rev up again here shortly. But I would jump at the next opportunity to do one because, look, I'm no doubt I was spoiled by this being my first video game. This is top of the line stuff with not only just the resources, but the quality of the script and the talent of the actors around you, the devotion and experience of the director and the producer. It's like no joke. It's better quality of storytelling than most of the films and television shows I've worked on because that's how talented and serious these folks are. So, but I'd give it a shot. Like, it's like, hey, anybody else who is as into it as this group was, I would gladly join forces with because it didn't just feel like, oh, this is cool new technology. I can learn a different way to use my acting in this new field. That all appealed to me. But then you stripped it all down and it was just you and two or three other really devoted actors on a stage. And like in theater, you don't have much in the way of props or special effects. And in this case, we didn't even have costumes to help us. You were purely reliant on the material and the people you were acting with. And there's something so, I guess, basic, not in the negative term we think of it these days. It's just the core of what you do. This is the thing. It's the reason I can just pick up 5 pages of sides for an audition. And if I have an actor friend across from me, like, I love that. Like, this is the thing. who are these characters? What's this about? What's going on in this scene? That in its purest form, rather than basic, let's say this experience was acting and storytelling in its purest form. And in some ways, yes, you needed to focus in an extra way on like the people's eyes, because if you really took in what's going on with them from head to toe, it's ridiculous. You might lose your concentration, but it was not a problem even for a moment with this group of people.
Yeah, because everything I've heard.
Oh, I think I lost you. You said
Oh,
Don one.
okay, okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry, my audio cut out. Uh, Don did say there is one person he'd prefer not to work with again. However, he never said who it was.
Never a bad move. He knows who that person is. He can avoid that. But in a professional setting like this, it's generally best to leave names unnamed, because you never know, that
Yeah,
person might end up having like a great gig for him somewhere down the line, and he'd think again. But for me, and again, I was there for much less time than those guys, and everybody was fun and kind and professional and respectful. And there's nobody I give more credit to than those actors you've been naming: Don, Jeremy, Andrew, who they'd been there for 2 3 months. They'd gone to Europe together, and they knew, I was just going to come and go for a few days. There was no reason to make me feel like one of the gang and part of the family, but they did it immediately. And I can never express my gratitude fully enough for that feeling, because there's been plenty of times you show up on a show for a day, all the stars, they're there for the third year in a row, and you're like a prop, you're furniture to them. They're not necessarily rude, but there's just no connection or warmth or welcoming. It's a professional handshake. Here we go, let's do this, see you never. With these guys, I mean, this last year I haven't been able to see any of them, but I ended up getting into a theater group with Jeremy. I did a table read with Andrew and Don, and it was more than just your paycheck job for sure.
yeah, because actually with some of those guys, I actually have upcoming interviews with some of them actually. Uh, but yeah, like, is there any other projects that you're planning on working on soon, like besides like say video games or the ones you're currently working on?
Well, right now I am slowly, excruciatingly slowly getting my new feature through post production. It's called Invaders from Proxima B, and this is my first feature as writer director that I have a leading role in. And it's with a handful of incredible actors that I've worked with before and their friends. All great working actors, seeing them in TV shows and movies. And so we shot it all at my house, and my daughter played my daughter. And it's about an alien that crashes in my backyard, and it's a furry little puppet with animatronic eyes. And it's just the hijinks surrounding an alien crashing in your backyard, and a bunch of weirdos start coming around trying to figure out what happened, and if you're hiding an alien from them. And it all takes place over like 24 hours. And it was torturous making a movie in your own house, producing it, helping like basically be the cinematographer and the director and a leading role. I was really miserable making it, which is too bad. Everybody else seemed to have a pretty good time, which is somewhat helpful for me to not be like, oh man, you had all these wonderful people at your house helping you make this thing. Why can't I just enjoy that? But I think I was just stretched too thin. But then when I finally got it cut together and we did some reshoots and we sent it out to some people, friends with kids, because it's hopefully something that kids really like. There's a funny furry puppet, but it's also hip enough that the parents like it too. And the response was really, really great. And that was without visual effects. That was with temporary score. That was out without any kind of, we have some animation aspects and, without any kind of sound design or ADR. So now that we're, I don't know, hopefully it'll be really completely 100% done by June. Um, that, and again, I don't have much money to do this, so I have an amazing composer, an amazing effects house, a great animator, but I'm not paying them all enough to like quit or pause their day job, which is doing those things, but for like studios or TV networks who are paying them big money year round to work on their shows and movies. So they just have to work us in when they can. But I feel like, man, it worked well when all these families screened it at home in its roughest form. So I do have faith that it'll end up being a nice little family comedy you can watch on Amazon Prime in a year. But damn, that's been going since 2018. And then I've got a couple unscripted TV series in the works. I don't want to talk about those yet, but hopefully, maybe the next time we talk, one or two of those will be have been greenlit. And then I do a podcast, an Indiana University basketball podcast, and the team is absolute garbage these days. But we end up talking to many of the great players and coaches from years past, and so that's a form of entertainment. We get to kind of be goofballs for a couple hours a week talking to really fun, interesting people. So, it's a huge mixed bag right now of what this last year has been when there's literally no acting work to be had. It's being a producer, a podcaster. Maybe I'll do some writing. I play way too much guitar badly, but it's just trying to still be productive and creative while stuck in your home.
Yeah, because all right, because like that's one of the things I've seen a lot of people, like, of course, doing in say the pandemic now. Like during the pandemic, a lot of people are trying to be a lot more creative, and people are trying to get a lot more things done. And when it does come to say like your work, I really hope we do get to see that film done pretty soon. Like, because as you said before, you estimate it should be about done by June. So once that comes out, since I'm a critic, I'll see if I can watch it and I'll give it a review if I can.
Would
Um,
would love that. Yeah, it's I think there so few things have been made for the last year. My hope is that there's a real it's that it's actually for once a seller's market, that I'll actually be able to get, some if not all of the money back and have it show up with decent placement on Netflix or Amazon Prime, because with movies like these, you're never going to make much money, if any. So you're just like, but it'll all be worth it if people can actually see it. If I can tell them to go and stream it tomorrow night for free in the comfort of their living room, that's considered a huge win in indie film these days.
all right, roughly how much money would you say has gone into this project so far?
Oh, I'd say we're about 40 grand into it.
All right. Like
Yeah.
I could see that working for like a lot of different indie films. Like sometimes indie films can either be absolute like zero budget or they can be absolute like tons of thousands of dollars. So I'm
Well,
glad to hear the project is going pretty well so far, and I hope to see it once it's all done.
yeah, and I'll tell you where sort of there's different benchmarks, but these are all SAG actors, and they all agreed to do this for the absolute minimum, far below their normal rate. Um, but even that, even at the lowest possible notch on the pay scale for SAG-AFTRA actors, you shoot for 25 days and it adds up. So, I think somebody, not in LA, maybe, it's a younger cast, maybe, where like, hey, here's some young talented theater actors from the area who aren't in the union yet. You could make one for a lot cheaper than that. We shot it on my iPhone at my house. So it was mostly food and paying for SAG is where most of the money is gone. So in this day and age, you can do it a lot cheaper than that. But at the same time, I made it about an alien. So there's gonna be some special effects money, both in practical and in visual effects that are inescapable. But if you write for a budget of $2,000, there's your iPhone, get a microphone, maybe you buy a couple of lights. That's all you need. Go make your movie. There's no excuse anymore.
Yeah, yeah, because like a lot of different work I've been trying to do. I've thought about making like films something like that. However, I can't really ever get proper ideas. And the game I'm making, I have all it planned out. It's still in some of the development stages. However, once it gets a little bit further in, then we'll see exactly where it kind of goes to.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know the first thing to do about creating a video game. It seems incredibly labor intensive, but you don't at least have the pressure of 12 people showing at your up at your house for 12 hours a day for like 4 weeks in a row. It seems like you could take it a little bit more piece by piece.
So, is there anything else like say like big you want to kind of like mention?
No, no, I think I probably caught you more up on my life than you were even expecting, but it's been a year of not hanging out with people. And it is crazy because you get so in your daily routine of everything, and it's like one foot in front of the other, but a chance to have a conversation. And of course, on the IU basketball podcast, we do it so much about asking other people about their lives and what they've done or what they're doing. And it's fun. It is fun to be on this side of it and kind of get to reflect on, you're always worried about what's next, but I feel so lucky to have been a part of this video game. And, there was a lot of fun and fanfare as it came out, but I don't want to just, go right back to pretending like, okay, what's next? What's next? It's like, I was excited to talk to you about this and reminisce again on making Mafia and still seeing the Discord pages here being active, and I know the Reddit posts are still going on. So it is fun to remember that thing we did a while ago now still is very much alive and out in the world, and it helps me get through tomorrow and trudge along to the next project or the next gig. You need to to remember the victories along the way to keep you going through the many days, weeks, months of nothing cool happening, because it is really, really exciting and totally worth it when something like this comes together. And a couple years later, I get to be talking with you about it on a Saturday afternoon.
Well, that's a great thing to hear. Before we finish off this interview, for the fans out there, would you mind doing the Ralphie voice for them?
Yeah, that would be fine. I haven't practiced it for a while, but I hope this is close enough.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ward. Thank you very much for coming out here.
Absolutely, Seamus. Anytime. Take care, man.
All right, you two. Have a great day.